welcome to the audience in front of us as well as the audience at home. Thank you for being a part of Medfield TV's live election debate held at the Medfield High School Auditorium for the Bristol-Norfolk District. Before we continue tonight, I'd like to thank some well-deserving individuals that allowed this evening to take place. We have a group of volunteers tonight that have been a wonderful addition to the planning process, setup, and functions of tonight's event. Cheryl Dudley, Eileen DeSorda, Kelly Powell, Chris McHugh, Bonnie Wren Burgess, and a senior here at the Medfield High School, Caitlin Sheehy. Here, of course, in the high school auditorium, and have been so happy to work with the wonderful staff here at the school, including our audio specialist, Seth Hellerstein, the wonderful custodial staff here at the high school who helped us set up and the event, and of course the administration who allowed us to use this space. I have an amazing staff who's filming this event and a live selecting meeting at the same time. So we have, if you're watching on our government channel, you're watching the selecting meeting on Comcast 22 and Verizon 45. You're watching Rachel Ferrulo, who is at the selecting meeting right now. On camera 1, up top, he's covering the live stream for our viewers on YouTube is Eric Giselle. We have Olivia Duvall, who's also a senior here at the high school. And we have Hong Lee Bruno on camera 3. Introducing our wonderful people on stage with me tonight, we have 3 panelists from the Hometown Weekly, Amelia Torello, the chairman of the school committee and a member of the Medfield Coalition for Suicide Prevention, Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke. And we have from the Medfield State Hospital Planning Committee, Gil Rogers. And of course, what would this night be without the candidates for tonight's debate? State Representative Denise Garlick has joined us. She's off stage to my left. She'll be delivering a speech here tonight. Our 2 candidates that will be debating are incumbent Representative Shawn Dooley and candidate Brian Hamlin. We'll also have 2 Senate candidates, our incumbent Senator Paul Feeney and Candidate Jacob Ventura. And finally, I'm the moderator for the evening, General Manager of Medfield TV, Brett Boyer. The format and the rules. The format and the rules of this debate are as follows. We ask the audience to remain silent throughout the debate, and we appreciate your cooperation with that request. Each candidate will receive 2 minutes to answer each question with a 30-second rebuttal to the candidate who answered first, with each which will be timed by one of our lovely volunteers. The candidate's order has been selected prior to the event tonight and will rotate through as the event goes on. Each candidate will have an intro and then follow that with questions from our panelists. From there, we'll have an intermission where we will collect questions from the live audience in front of us. After the audience selection, the candidates will each have a closing statement and we will close out the section of the debate. We'll have an intermission for 10 minutes and we will return for the Senate candidates who will repeat the process and close out the evening. Our order tonight is incumbents first, and then our candidate will be second. So, without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing our first part of this debate tonight, is our state representative of the 13th Norfolk District, Denise Garlick. Denise.
Good evening to everyone who's here present, and everyone who is watching this at home. I want to thank Medfield TV first and foremost, and Brett, for this incredible consideration. Many people may know that I have prevailed in the primary and am now unopposed in the general election, but I am given these few minutes to be able to address the people of Medfield, and I'm deeply grateful for that. I wanted to say to all of you as we begin this evening that Pittsburgh is hundreds of miles and just a heartbeat away from Medfield. It is Medfield like us, those people who are like us, that are a community. Tonight, as we discuss issues, let us not forget our greatest shared value. In Medfield, our greatest shared value is our sense of community. I want to express my deep appreciation to all of Medfield for the honor and privilege of being one of your state representatives. And I want to express my gratitude to the voters of Precinct 1 and 2 for their strong support so that I could prevail in the primary and stand before you in the general election. As you may know, Medfield has 2 state representative positions. I represent Precinct 1 and 2. I am uncontested in the general election, but always responsible and accountable to you. I wanted to briefly give some examples of my work on the behalf of the people of Medfield and hope that you will see that this work is worthy of your attention and your vote. A state representative serves as a vital link between the town and the state. For Medfield, that link will be valuable as we move forward with the Medfield State Hospital Reuse Plan. Additionally, senior housing and housing for veterans and vulnerable populations is a major focus of conversation and energy and attention in the town of Medfield. And the ability to work with the state agencies and to be able to leverage resources will make a great deal of difference as we move forward navigating all the state laws, agencies, and resources that will take place in this process. And also for Medfield, with great courage, has taken on the issue of mental health and suicide prevention. With my fellow representative and with the great leadership of Senator Paul Feeney, we were able to leverage $30,000 worth of money from the state budget to support our Medfield Suicide Prevention Coalition. It is the heart of the community taking on hard work, and the strength of the state and the motivation of the community makes a major difference. There's also a strong link that happens from the representative to the state on behalf of the community, and then on the behalf of the representative from the state back to the community. And for all of you, I hope you feel that it is my work as the chair of the Joint Committee on Mental Health, Substance Use, and Recovery. The 2018 opioid bill that you are hearing talked about pretty consistently in the press right now, that deals with prevention at the community level in partnership with the synergy of the schools, deals with enhancing our behavioral health system. Behavioral health is mental health and substance use recovery together, and deals with care and treatment, and calls for treatment for individuals at the time they need it, at the place they need it, is the work of my committee. That work makes a major difference in our Commonwealth for 6 million people, and it makes a major difference here at home in Medfield. The town of Medfield is strong with caring, committed individuals, serving and staff, elected, appointed, and volunteer positions. Incredible individuals. It is my pleasure to work with each and every one. I am proud of the town of Medfield, and I love the people of Medfield. I humbly ask for your vote and look forward to being of service in all of our endeavors together.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Representative Garlick. And now to our state debate. We begin with the opening statements from our two representative candidates, and they have selected that candidate. Our incumbent comes first. So, without further ado, Representative Shawn Dooley.
Thank you very much, Brian, and thanks for everyone for being here. I'd like to just take Denise's speech and put it instead of precincts 1 and 2, 3, and 4, but that might be a little obvious. It is my greatest honor serving the town of Medfield and serving all of the 9th Norfolk District. It really is, as Denise said, it's all about community. It's all about working together. It's all about, creating partnerships and relationships, and whether it's helping people here at home or helping them navigate the process of government or working through legislative initiatives up on Beacon Hill, we all work together. And that's what makes Medfield such a special, special place. And we have a great community. We had a great turnout at town meeting last night. We have so much energy. The state hospital committee has, met for, I don't know, 17 years now? 40, okay. And it's been such a great experience getting to know all of these people, and it is truly my honor to serve, and I hope I get to continue serving. Denise and I work great together. We balance each other really well. I'm not saying she has any strengths, but her strengths plays to my weaknesses, and it's been wonderful. And so thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope I can earn your vote this November, or currently during open early voting season. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Our next opening statement is from candidate Brian Hamlin.
Good evening. My name is Brian Hamlin. Thank you for all coming tonight. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Brett, I appreciate your time and your staff's time out here tonight. As going forward here, I would like to humbly ask for your vote in regards for running a state representative. I want to make the community wholesome. I want to reach out. I want the community to be as good as they possibly can. I want them to reach out to their neighbors. I want to see some good come out of all of this. The towns themselves, Medfield, one of them, is an outstanding town. I've been working here for years. I've met a lot of people here. People are always warm, always welcoming, and I want to appreciate that and spread that further. I don't want to see catastrophes having to happen when people have to reach out for it. The towns that are around us are always great. Medfield has been fantastic. They have great possibilities coming up with the Medfield State Hospital. The meeting last night went sensational, and they're just looking forward to a community that is overwhelming. When I went to community days and everything else, it's really staggering to walk around and see all the people around enjoying, having a great time, laughing, joking with each other. And that's something the rest of the world should be seeing. I want to appreciate that as much as possible. I want to be there for you on anything that I can do absolutely possible in the State House. I look forward to working with people. I've had conversations with Denise Garlick also, who's been outstanding for you. Representative Dooley has done great work over here also. And I just want to appreciate the fact that I want to do more. I want to present that to you, and I want to humbly ask for your vote this fall, next week, 1 week from today. Thank you.
Now we open to our panelist questions. Our first question coming from our media source, Amelia Torello, answered by candidate Hamlin.
Hi, so my question for you guys is, what role do you see the press as having in the electoral process?
Candidate Hamlin?
Press will always have the information that's available for people. They need to get the explanations out there for them, the process that they need for having a good education on their voting. The press is going to be putting out the information for them that they're going to need to vote in one direction or the other, to have the opinions from people that are out there, so they, I should say, so they can draw their own opinions with good information that's presented to them from the press.
Good. And same question to you, Representative Dooley.
Senator, Representative, whatever. Senator Feeney probably wouldn't appreciate that, but thank you for that question. The fourth estate is critical to our democracy. We need a strong press. It's a check and balance on our government. It's our information link to our people. It's a way to express ideas and share our understanding. And it has been a vital portion of our nation from before we were a nation. Getting out the word, having information. You know, Benjamin Franklin and and Thomas Paine working on the press, getting it out to the people so people could understand the issues, to understand what was going on, to cut through the baloney and the facts of all the politicians making all sorts of spin and innuendo. The press is there to give us the whole story, the big story. You can't do it in a 30-second soundbite. You can't do it in a 2-minute debate. You can do it in a 3-page long article in Newsweek. And so that's what I feel is the press's greatest role, is being that protectorate of our electorate, that protectorate of our nation, and keeping everyone honest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And your rebuttal, candidate.
Okay. What I see in regards for everything being out there, as the press presents everything out to the public, it creates a more wholesome community in the essence that they are now communicating. Press will draw out their information, people will sit and go through it, and as you present it to another person, you're now bringing the communities together, because now they're sitting down and discuss things as they should be. Not argued out, just an open discussion for things.
Fantastic. Our next question is from our local government official, Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke, and answered first by Representative Dooley.
Thank you. As you know, here in Medfield, one of our core values is education. So much so that the town passed 2 overrides last spring supporting an operational override and a new school feasibility. We are very grateful for this support and do not want to take it for granted. But as you also know, Medfield does not have a commercial tax base. The state aid portion of Medfield's budget has not kept up with the increasing costs associated with providing a world-class education, so the cost of education is becoming more of a burden on the residential taxpayer. I know that each of you support public education, but how does that support translate to helping Medfield alleviate some of this burden? And does it or can it increase the state aid for Medfield? And a second part to this is, do you ever see the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Panel ever being implemented to help communities like Medfield?
I'll take the second part first. The Foundation Budget Review, we were able to pass in the House here at the end of the session. It is critical, and it really dovetails to your first part of your question. The funding formula that we created 25 years ago in the state is broken. We have needs and issues that no one ever even anticipated 20 years ago. You know, the special ed funding is through the roof, and it's critical, but it's, you know, and even the transportation with special ed or you know, within the communities has gotten so out of control that it's really, really hard. And so what we really need to do is the Foundation Budget Review Commission did a phenomenal job of basically tearing everything apart, and let's start over at the beginning and let's look to see how we can, let's start at square one and what we can do to make sure that all of our schools are funded correctly or proportionately, and make sure that there's as much parity as possible. And we were able to pass it in the House. Part of it got passed in the Senate. We weren't able to get it through on the conference committee. But I do feel that there's a strong, strong appetite. We've been making progress. I've been on the Education Committee a few years ago up there. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there was no shot of it happening. A lot of the communities that are going to lose a little bit in order to balance things out had their heels dug in. And so I really feel that that has turned. People are looking more, as we talked about community, they're looking more at the bigger picture. You know, rising tide raises all boats, and they really feel that that's where we're going to be coming up. Real quick, I see my 30 seconds is almost up, but as far as working with a school building authority and things along those lines, you know, that's something that we are critical. You know, it's critical for us to do with you. Work as a partnership with the school committee, with the superintendent, with the administration, with the select board, and to make sure that we're able to get as much state funding as possible on all different issues. You know, whether it's special ed funding, you know, making sure that we get fully funded circuit breaker, make sure that we're able to get public transportation covered, all of these things. And one of the other things I've been trying to do is create a third level of special ed funding, because we do have some children in Medfield that are dramatically high. So I know. I'm Irish. I can't talk.
I was waiting for the lights to come on.
Yeah, we're going to get a hook next time. So Candidate Hamlin, your response.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, sorry, it's very... Anyways, as you know, here in Medfield, one of our core values is education. So much so that the town passed 2 overrides last spring, supporting an operational override and a new school feasibility. We are very grateful for this support and do not want to take it for granted. But as you also know, Medfield does not have a commercial tax base. The state aid portion of Medfield's budget has not kept up with the increasing costs associated with providing a world-class education. So the cost of education is becoming more of a burden on the residential taxpayer. I know that each of you support public education, but how does that support translate to helping Medfield alleviate some of this local burden, and does it or can it increase state aid for Medfield? And my second part is, do you ever see the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Panel ever being implemented to help communities like Medfield?
Okay. Thank you for repeating that. One of the big things that you're asking is, is the possibility there for extra funding? It was one thing that I definitely want to fight for. The kids that are growing nowadays, their education is not the same as when we were growing up. It's changed drastically. We need to keep up to date with it, and we need to start finding more funding for it. Biggest thing for kids learning is you need more of a one-on-one type of thing, not to say, but we need to lower the classrooms, population of classrooms or attendance in classrooms to get the teachers on board with it. And we need to find a good way to do it. I want to look into doing different things, whether they be fundraisers for the different schools and everything else, to bring the fundings towards it from the communities themselves still, but not on a tax basis. So as the kids are in school, the parents are going to have more attention to it. They're going to want more behind it as their kids are going to the schools, and it's going to be something that they're going to be looking to do. Parents are going to want to do more things for their children that are in there. So I'd like to see that come out of the community.
And your rebuttal, Representative Dooley.
I should have known I had my extra 30 seconds. It is a process. It is very difficult. You know, it's very frustrating because we had $80,000 set aside in the supplemental budget this last time. Governor Baker put it forward. We had worked with a lot of the powers that be that we had. It was very bipartisan that was going to increase the regional transportation funding, as well as bring the circuit breaker for last year's budget all the way up to be whole. And unfortunately, it got cut out at the last minute. That money, for some reason, got dumped into the rainy day fund. We're still trying to find out why that happened, but it's very, very frustrating because our schools are overburdened. We have, you know, we come up with these ideas and we force them on our schools, and they have to pay for them, and our taxpayers have to pay for them. The schools have to do these things that they don't have money for, and so they're having to cut something else in order to fund these unfunded mandates that politicians come up with, you know, out of the blue without money. Oh, I'm sorry. Eileen, I'm sorry. It's kind of hard just to. Could you? I don't know if going over there. I can't really see you right there. I don't know. Can you? Or maybe I'm just getting old and my eyes are lousy.
If I see it, I'll
okay, yeah, let me know, please.
And our panelist, our local resident, Gil Rogers, has the next question with the first response coming from Candidate Hamlin.
Thank you.
This is a little different question, but I think one that affects everyone here. I think that there's an imbalance between the infrastructure that's in this area, the highways, the water system, the sewer system, and the growth, the enormous growth that's taking place in housing. And I want your reaction to, first of all, do you agree with that hypothesis? And then secondly, what to do about it? Getting around Medfield in this area by car, which is the primary means of transportation, is becoming increasingly difficult and frustrating. Getting to 128, to 95, to Route 9 is becoming a real problem in the morning and in the evening. I live on North Street, and I find in the morning, starting at, I don't know, 6:30 in the morning, up until after 9, it's just a stream of traffic that's going on. It's hard to get out. And similarly in the evening, there's backups all the way from Wellesley into Medfield and beyond. So the infrastructure, in this case the transportation, the road system, is out of balance with what the growth is in this area. And I don't think it's only transportation. I think the same kind of thing is growing with respect to the water system, the water supply system, and the sewage handling system in this area. So it's an imbalance between infrastructure and growth. And while I'd like you to, first of all, see if you sense that same hypothesis, that same problem, and if so, what are your suggestions? What can be done about it?
Thank you. There is no question the population is growing. The streets are getting more crowded. If you live on North Street, you're lucky to get out of your driveway, I believe, in the morning. There's a few areas that are very tight. I drive through Medfield all the time. We do a lot of work through the area and everything else, so I sit in that traffic that you speak of. I mean, you need to work on the infrastructure in regards for the lighting systems, everything else. I know they were at the meeting last night, they voted down speed limits and that. Speed limits aren't going to do a lot for it, but we definitely need to keep our eye on water. We need to keep our eye on the sewerage. And the streets are definitely something that need to be worked on. They are old, they are outdated. We need to keep things up to date with it. So it's an infrastructure that needs to be watched in all aspects for the safety reason and for the ease of everything. The flying cars are coming along, they're not coming quick enough. It's something that has to be watched over all the time in regards for what's going to be happening in the community, because you need to place out more time for it. We need to keep an eye on things for the roads and keep an idea for it and set up a master plan for it to get things going, to open up areas that are congested. Definitely need to.
Agree with you 100%. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that watching the Truska trucks drive down Route 109 and chew up the roads, and then also the side roads and whatever other roads that you can happen, that there's a problem with congestion, and our roads are getting beat, our bridges are getting destroyed, and it's not just in Medfield, it's across the Commonwealth. We need to, as a state, not just as a region, not just as a local community, we need to, as a state, and also partnering with our federal government, is to understand that we need to have the infrastructure in place to make sure that we can be a 21st century state, a 21st century city, because it all builds upon itself. If all of a sudden Amazon comes here, we're going to be devastated because it's going to be that many more cars on the road. We need to make sure, whether it's creating a new federally state project like a Tennessee Valley Authority, going back to the, back a little before my time, but create these real infrastructures with long-term projects and long-term understandings, and instead of each individual town doing their own little thing and not being in conjunction with the next town over, we need to be able to be partnered a little better and make sure that our roads and our water and our sewers all connect. All right, sorry. Thank you.
And your rebuttal.
As you talk about the lack of commercial tax base in Medfield, what needs to be looked at is the larger companies that are bringing the people along for the traveling as they're doing on the roads and everything else. You need to start looking at the tax basis that needs to be spread out from those larger companies that are in there to be dispersed out throughout the communities. If there are residents out of the area, I mean, you need to be pulling money out of there. It needs to be something that needs to be looked at. There is no question.
And our final question is from myself tonight. Your position as a representative covers much ground. It changes day by day. It's all the time. We've covered so much ground here of education, whether it be traveling. It's all over the place. We have a state rep who just wrote a bill on suicide prevention, so or on opioid use. So your ground is covered. It's wide and vast. November 6th comes. Either one of you is elected as our representative. What is the most important issue you see tackling as your day one starts? And that's, your first answer is Representative Dooley.
First issue into the new session?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I would say right now, probably our #1 issue is healthcare. Currently, 30% of Massachusetts population is on Mass Health. It constitutes now 40% of our budget. It is growing at a rate faster than inflation. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that we cannot keep up that pace. It's continuing to grow. It's grown $4 billion over the past 7 years. We cannot sustain that model. If we want to have roads and bridges, and we want to have infrastructure, and we want to have more funding for our schools, we have to look at our health insurance and make sure that these costs are under control, and also look at different models and make sure that, one, we're getting the best health insurance and health coverage for our citizens, but also make sure that we're covering every single base, and make sure that we are people that are abusing the system, and whether it be doctors or prescribers or big mammoth companies. 1 minute. Big mammoth companies that are gouging us for the prescription costs. We need to be proactive and really put together a comprehensive bill that addresses this and at least stops the bleeding of the funding. We need to have great health insurance for all of our people, but we also need to make sure that we don't do it purely at the expense of every single thing else. We need to have roads, we need to have bridges, we need to have schools, we need to have a million things. And if we just kind of let it run along like it has been without addressing the problems, it's going to continue to get worse, and it's going to eventually eat up our entire budget.
And your response.
Thank you. The healthcare industry is definitely one we need to look at. I want to look one step further and go into the mental health industry. It's something that we really need to focus more on in regards for substance abuse, suicide prevention, as well as violence. We have all kinds of issues that, I mean, you watch the news at night, it's just horrific to see the different things that are going on in the country, the way people are being treated, the way people are being talked to. It's just amazing to see things like that, that when you focus on things on a mental health industry, you need to start paying attention to more things in regards for what's making people work, what's making them tick, what's causing the issues that are out there. If you can change your life, alter your life to make it something better, would it be something where they don't have the same anger that they do nowadays? Is it frustration? What's causing that? We need to really look at that.
And your rebuttal.
Won't disagree with that, but what I guess I would just add is that all of these things that we look at, and Representative Garlick can attest to this, is they're all interconnected. All the bills that we have, they have some sort of reach or some unintended consequence or some positive consequence with other bills. And so we have to make sure that we have a wide range of understanding on a lot of different things. And I'm very blessed. I have a lot of experts that I can reach out to, and that's what I try to do. And I try to make sure that we have all these things, lined up so they continue to move forward. And if I have to pick one, that's the one I'll pick, but I can also probably ramble off another 50.
Absolutely. So thank you. So at this point, we want to thank our representatives for answering these questions so far and our panelists for coming up to them. But this is where the crowd now gets to be involved. You have a red and a green cue card with you, or at least I hope you have one. The red one, please write your representative question down. You just heard these two gentlemen debate. So write these down, and then our lovely assistants will come up and start collecting from you, and we will each choose one question from each. All right, so thank you everyone for submitting your questions. Definitely a lot of really good ones. We selected 3. Each one of the our panelists did. And so we open with our first question coming from Amelia Tarallo and answered first by Candidate Hamlin.
So my question is, access to mental health services, sorry about that, is significantly limited in this state. How do you address this issue?
What was that question again?
Access to mental health services are significantly limited in this state. How do you address this issue?
It's something we're going to need to focus on in regards for seeking more help and getting more people out to speak with them in regards for we need the people to be able to open up. We need to be able to get in touch with the people to have the accessibility to get to them and then work with them on it.
And Representative Dooley.
It kind of dovetailed to my last question on number one priority in the budget is it's the cost of health care. Right now, we have a shortage of beds, whether it's for opiate recovery, whether it's for inpatient, whether it's for outpatient. All of those issues are being squeezed because of the lack of funding. We don't have the ability to create more space, create more beds. One of the things that I've been trying to work with the sheriff about is we have a whole prison in Norfolk that's completely vacant, and it's state-of-the-art. It has all these wonderful things. I'm like, why aren't we using this as an opiate treatment center? Why aren't we using this to address some of mental health? Why aren't we using this to address other issues, not as a prison, but as a community? We have the resources. We have this money. We're paying for the electricity. We have a brand new solar field there. We have all those sort of things. So we need to think outside of the box. in how we fund it, how we address it, where we go to make sure that these people are getting the help they deserve and they need. And, one minute, and we need to make sure that we're able to, I believe it's our duty as human beings to take care of those people that have, whether it's an opiate addiction or whether it's another mental health issue. We need to make sure that we take care of them. We owe it to ourselves. It builds a better community. It builds a longer, more sustainable community, and it's just the right thing to do. I'm done.
Fantastic. And your rebuttal.
There are a couple of locations. We also have the state hospital in Rentham that would be able to use over there, and the biggest crisis is coming from the healthcare industry. As they look at for the opiate crisis, for alcohol, it's a very limited amount of time that they allow for them for their mental health. As they go through it all, they're looking at days as they're going through things, and now they say, okay, well, you're better now. Mental health industry is telling them that they're better now. You can now go back to your life. They're not ready for that. They need the time frame out there for renewing their life, for getting themselves back on track. And it's something that they need to focus on through the healthcare industry to say, yeah, you're right, they need more than this because they just keep coming back. If we don't address it properly, they just keep coming back. So they need more time frames spent in there, and the healthcare industry needs to pay attention to that.
Our next question is from Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke for the representatives, answered first by Representative Dooley.
Thank you.
Hi. What are your thoughts on question 3 and protecting LGBTQ rights?
Question 3, for those who don't know, that's the transgender rights bill. The opposition is framing it as a bathroom bill. I was actually the lead Republican on the original bill, so obviously I'm going to be supporting question 1. I'm going to be voting yes on question 3, and it's just, again, this falls back into just the same as what we've been talking about all night. It's about community. It's about basic human understanding. It's about basic rights. The reason I fought for it and the reason I unfortunately got attacked by the alt-right on it was because this isn't about some bizarre boogeyman that's going to come down and attack our children in the bathroom. This is about human beings and letting them live their lives, letting them live their lives as citizens, letting them enjoy the same freedoms that everybody else has. Listen, if there's someone that's bad and doing the wrong thing, I don't care whether they're transgender, gay, straight, purple, whatever. They should be taken care of, arrested, convicted, and everything like that. But the reality is that has never been the case in the transgender community. There has been very no proof, as far as that I know of. None of the opposition was ever able to give any proof about any boogeyman scenario. And so the reality is we should support everyone. I don't care what your sexual identity is. I don't care what your nationality is. I don't care what your race or religion or creed. We're too divided in this country. We need to stop worrying about being divided. We need to worry about being Medfield residents. We need to worry about being Massachusetts residents. We need to worry about being Americans. We need to worry about being humans and being members of the planet Earth.
And your response?
Question 3 has my full support. There's nothing worse in life to be told that you can't live life as you want to. So if they're able to live life freely, they should be able to do the way they're identifying themselves to use the facilities. It will make them feel more comfortable. They aren't looking to hurt anybody. They're just looking to feel at home, at peace with themselves, so they're able to live their life in a comfortable fashion. If they're always tense, trying to do different things, it's never good for them. So it's something that they need to do in order to live their life better. It should be allowed.
And your rebuttal?
And I guess I would just add to that is that I had an experience right before the vote, and we were in a local establishment, not with my family, and with my kids, and there was a transgender woman there standing next to us, and we were talking to her, and after we went and sat down, I asked my kids, I'm like, where should she go to the bathroom? And my kids, were like, well,
that's your time.
Oh, that's my time. Well, she should definitely go in the women's bathroom, and I won't go on and on. 30 seconds is really short.
It's a short time, right? Our final audience question is brought to you by Gil Rogers, and the first one answering is Candidate Hamlin.
This is a very obvious question. What's your vision for the Medfield State Hospital in 3 minutes or less?
3 minutes or less.
We got 2 minutes.
The meeting was longer than that last night. The vision up there, I mean, to having the cultural arts up there is fantastic. It's something great. I mean, if you can put together a community up there for senior people, for people that are looking to relax and enjoy their time around there, it would be absolutely fantastic. I mean, that was something that they're looking for. The grounds around there are unbelievable. The buildings around there are unbelievable. If you can bring those up to date, people are comfortable living in there, it's going to be unbelievable. It'd be great for the residents of Medfield and anybody else that has the opportunity to be there.
Your response?
It's funny that Gil would bring that question up. I'm shocked. My very first meeting I'm going to screw up my time, but even after I was elected, but before I was sworn in, was in Gil's living room discussing the Medfield State Hospital. So this has been going on for quite some time, and it's been a pleasure, and it's been great working with Denise to bring the hospital home to Medfield. It can be the showpiece for Medfield. Gene Minow and the entire Cultural Council have done a phenomenal job. Their vision for the future up there is phenomenal. I've been working with the town planner and the town selectmen on the RFI and bringing in additional developers. And we can really, truly make this a special place. We can, I met with Jay Ash a couple weeks ago about doing out along the Charles, the building all the way in the back, having that being an innovation lab and bring in, make it a co-op situation where we can bring in small businesses to have them start as an incubator there and have that be funded by the state because they're trying to do more things along those lines to help small businesses get up and running, especially technology or medical devices, things like that. Having the cultural center in the middle will really anchor having some good solid retail that adds to the community, not hurts the community, and then being smart about the residential. I mean, we have to make sure that we are able to, whether it's 55 plus or whether it be affordable or not affordable, I shouldn't say not affordable, but less affordable, more middle of the stream as opposed to going through the 40B model. We need to be able to let people continue to live here. We have, with the sledding hill across the street and with all the facilities, it could really make Medfield a centerpiece. I mean, it is such a great potential with the agricultural on the side. It can really be smart. It can really be beautiful. And I commend your committee for all the work that you've done. Well thought out. You've addressed every single idea and then some. And I think the overall final plan has been phenomenal, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So thank you.
I think that was perfect timing.
I didn't even get the waving.
Your rebuttal.
I mean, like I said, it's a fantastic piece of property up there. I was up there years ago. My dad had a friend up there that worked up there, and he was at the workshops. We used to stop over there, and we'd be in there. If they still have anything like that, it would be great to keep something like that open. Any of the citizens around there that would be liking to work on things, whether it be craft things, anything like that, just to help things, just to draw people in around there a little bit. Selling things around there, if they're building things like that, working on some projects that are around there, would be great for them to do something on that idea. It would be a great asset for having up there.
Fantastic. So thank you all that participated in this portion of the debate by submitting questions. We truly appreciate your addition to this event. We now end this portion of tonight with our closing statements. Each candidate has 3 minutes. We begin with our closing statement from Representative Dooley.
Once again, thank you everyone for coming out, and thank you, Brad, and the panel for giving up their yet another evening for public service. Public service is so important. We need more of it. I commend Brian for running. I commend all of you for being active. It is a passion. It is a need. We have too many people within our community that drive on our roads and use the water, but their only commitment to the town or the community or is to open the garage door, close the garage door, and the world goes away. some of my Republican brethren might tease me a little bit, but Hillary Clinton was spot on when it takes a village. We need to all be working together. Not Republicans, not Democrats, people. We need to be helping each other. We need to be coming together like they did on the State Hospital project, and every single community, every single interest had a voice. It was amazing. Didn't always agree. There was some, contentious moments. But that's what makes government work. That's what makes things work up on Beacon Hill. Doesn't always work, but it's building relationships. It's building partnerships. It's understanding each other's needs, and most importantly, it's willing to compromise. No one has all the right answers. I certainly don't. Ask my wife. We need to continue to develop more public service. We need to have civics taught more in the school. I've been pushing that since day one. We just got a civics bill released today, which I'm very excited about, that's going to the governor's desk, which will create more civics in our public schools. Not as much as I want, because it doesn't have the funding portion, but nevertheless, we cannot continue on the path of divisiveness that we've had in our country as of late. We need to be all together. We need to be one. We need to help each other. We need to stay strong. And it's just all about love and basic human kindness. And public service is a huge portion of that. I love being a state rep. I love helping people. And I would truly appreciate your vote.
Thank you. And candidate.
Public service is an honor. It's an honor to be here in front of you now. It's an honor to be here asking for a vote. It is something I don't ever want to lose sight of. Going through what we are here now, I've been around through different meetings, and we're sitting there to discuss things. Part of the opiate crisis was one, and we're sitting in a group where there was 6 different affiliates around there, from nursing care, from sober facilities, anything on that idea, and they're all sitting around there wondering what we can do to help each other, saying they can't work, one can't work with the other one, they're missing phone numbers. And another group said, we have the phone numbers. And as they sat there in that meeting, those 5 groups afterwards were exchanging numbers afterwards to make things better. Just a simple meeting, just a group meeting like we have here tonight. People are going to sit around and discuss things. What's going to make the community better? We need to know those questions so we can come up with answers. People are more than capable of coming up with the answers. And to sit here in front of you, I am honored to be here. I look forward to working with you. And I want to. It's something that I want to work for you. It's funny, we have, actually, Representative Dooley and I both belong to Norfolk Lions, and one of the best sayings I've heard from there is, neither above you nor below you, but with you. I'll hold that for the rest of my life. There isn't anybody that's better than us anywhere along the line. There isn't anybody that's below us. We're all the same. We just need to reach out, ask for help if we need it, lend the help if we have it. That's what we want to do. We want our community a wholesome place for everybody to relax and enjoy. Thank you for your time.
And thank you to these 2 amazing candidates who participated tonight, both our current Representative Shawn Dooley and candidate Brian Hamlin. Let's give these guys a round of applause. Good job. Thank you. All right, and welcome back to the Medfield TV live election debate. As we continue tonight, we have our 2 Senate candidates now on stage. Joining us is current Senator Paul Feeney. Thank you so much for joining us. As well as candidate Jacob Ventura. Thank you. Just like we did with the representatives, we open with a 3-minute opening statement, and the first comes from Senator Feeney.
Thank you, Brett, Medfield TV, and our panelists for hosting this program. Thanks to all of you, both here and at home, for taking the time to get to know us and for being an engaged voter. It is an honor and a privilege to serve as a state senator from our district, and I treasure the opportunity that I have to campaign for re-election. When I ran last year, I made it clear that we were going to do politics differently, and that I would serve with passion for the people of our district above all else. I have honored that commitment and have delivered for our district while fighting for our families and sticking up for our values. As a public servant, I am guided by those values learned through hard work in the private sector where I spent most of my life. In the last year, I have held dozens of district office hours, attended hundreds of events, and met with seniors in their homes, constituents in their communities, and early morning commuters at train stations throughout our district. My staff and I are frequently at the center over on Ice House Road, downstairs at the Medfield Library, and even camped out in the corner of Blue Moon, meeting with seniors, families, young people, and everyone in between. To be an effective senator, one must listen more than they speak. In those thousands of conversations that I've had with people throughout Medfield and our district, I've seen and heard firsthand the anxiety, both economic and otherwise, that so many of us feel. That anxiety is real. I hear you. I feel it myself. That is why I'm proud of my record of standing up for us in the Massachusetts Senate. I am proud to have a 100% voting record since taking the oath of office, and believe that our elected officials should be present, should be bold, and should lead. Through my votes and my actions, I have done just that. Shortly after taking office, I co-sponsored a comprehensive bill that would adjust the antiquated school funding formula and provide additional resources for our public schools. Additionally, I joined with other senators in passing a bill to lower health insurance and prescription costs. I stood up for women and fought for measures to protect health care rights in the face of attacks from the Trump administration, and will continue to fight for laws that demand equal pay for equal work. I fought for our environment and against pipelines and compressor stations. I advocated for funding for the arts and creative community. I supported bills this year that strengthen services for veterans and their families, that invest in 21st century jobs and economic growth in this region, as well as legislation that provides resources to those suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia. Here in Medfield, I was proud to join with Representative Garlick and Dooley to secure $30,000 in funding for suicide prevention in our community. I stand up for our district because I'm from here. I am invested in our communities, and I believe that we deserve a voice. I promised that I would never let politics get in the way of progress. I have proudly kept that promise and will continue to do so. I hope I have earned your trust, and I ask for your vote for re-election on Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next opening statement is from Candidate Ventura.
Well, thank you, Brett, and to our panelists. It's great to be here again this year. I think this is round 2 for the senator and I, so, and hopefully the final round. But it's great to be here in Medfield. I am Jacob Ventura, candidate for state senator here. Since 2011, I have served as a staff member in the Massachusetts House of Representatives, where I have assisted countless constituents, attended dozens of new business ribbon cuttings, presented citations at countless Eagle Scouts ceremonies, retirement parties, birthday milestones, and anniversaries. As a staffer, I have assisted senior citizens on fixed incomes, attained home heating assistance in the cold winter months, helped parents place their disabled child in adult daycare supervision, obtained access ramps for disabled veterans so they can enter their homes, assisted local businesses with regulation issues at the Department of Revenue, helped folks in the construction business obtain the necessary licensing needed to operate machinery, and worked with our regional transportation authorities to improve the accessibility for seniors and veterans to travel to medical facilities and grocery stores. Finally, I've worked on securing funding for our local safety improvements, such as installations of crosswalks for school children. I've assisted with securing the necessary funding for one of the top 10 most dangerous intersections in the Commonwealth down in Seekonk, which was a long-needed improvement project. Together with this region's legislative delegation, I have assisted in securing funding for local public safety complex traffic lights. We helped secure $4.6 million for state road repaving and sidewalk installation. We assisted a local housing authority in acquiring state funding for senior citizen housing development, and we acquired $20,000 in the 2019 fiscal budget for a generator at a local senior center. Born and raised in southeastern Massachusetts by a working class family, My family roots are strong here in the Commonwealth, coming from Portuguese, Cape Verdean, and Wampanoag descent. I attended public schools, and I'm a first-generation college graduate, graduating from UMass Dartmouth. I went on to earn my law degree from Washington and Lee in Virginia, and started working in the financial services industry and banking. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Governor Charlie Baker and Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito. I'll be an ally with them and their administration to benefit the town of Medfield. I'm also proud to have the endorsements of many of the regional legislative delegation, as well as local officials. We will work in a bipartisan manner to focus on strengthening our communities. And finally, I've been endorsed by the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. I'll promote a great business climate here in the Commonwealth and support our local entrepreneurs. I look forward to having a great discussion this evening.
Thank you. So now we open to our panelist questions. Coming from our first one is Amelia Tarallo, answered first by candidate Ventura.
Hi. So one of my best friends just graduated from nursing school, or finished her exams for nursing school, and she's a little concerned about question 1. And first I want to know, if there's a two-part question to this, if whether or not you support question 1, and if voted yes, what you will do to help nurses who don't feel comfortable with it, and, you know, outline, you know, how to sort of ease their worries.
Candidate Ventura?
Yeah, so, first of all, with these ballot questions, I think it's very clear, important for me to state clearly that I think the will of the people need to be respected. While it's my personal opinion that question 1 probably ought to even be on the ballot in its current form, I think it's 6 pages, it's very complex. My preference would be to have that measure come to the legislature and work this issue out through the committee process and the legislative process. That's my personal opinion. Because it's on the ballot, and having reviewed the independent health agency that came out recently, I think they had estimated that the conservative cost to additional healthcare costs throughout the Commonwealth, I think we're looking at $676 million to $949 million in additional cost. That report was a bit startling. Second, I've talked to folks throughout the medical community in this district. Sturdy Memorial Hospital comes to mind. They're a regional hospital in Attleboro, and this approach is a one-size-fits-all approach. I don't think it's going to work for some of our smaller community hospitals. Those types of hospitals and medical facilities compared to some of your bigger Boston-based facilities, quite different. And having this staffing ratio, I think, would cripple certain budgets and impact patient care. So again, I think it should be before the legislature, and I think that would be the appropriate time to bring all parties to the negotiation table, the Mass Nurses Association, as well as the nurses who are opposed to it, as well as the administrators. So that's that.
Thank you. And Senator Feeney.
Thank you, Amelia, for the question, and congratulations to your friend who's becoming a nurse. We certainly need more of them, and I think that's what this question is all about. Question 1, I will tell you that I am very supportive of it. As the vice chair of the Joint Committee on Public Health, dug really deep into this issue, listened to both sides, met with folks in the hospital executives, I met with nurses, both union and non-union, to really understand this issue and get a greater understanding of what we're seeing day to day in the hospitals. I'll tell you that I think the ballot petition process leaves a lot to be desired. That I do wish that the legislature had the courage to do this years ago. I don't know if Jacob Ventura would actually support it if it came to the legislature, but I'll tell you that the legislature had the opportunity to do it and they didn't. So that's why we end up with a question that's confusing people. For me, it's easy, and you can get down into the nuance of the issue. There's a lot of complications to this, but I'll tell you that the nurses that are the bedside nurses that do this work every day, taking care of us and our loved ones in the hospitals, when they go home with an aching back and sore feet, and they think to themselves, did I do everything that I could for those patients today? And all too often in hospitals across the Commonwealth, the answer is, you know what, I didn't. I didn't, because I had too many people to take care of. And it's not because they didn't want to take care of those patients, it was because they were told by managers and executives that there weren't enough nurses, that they had to take on those extra patients. That's a problem. That's a problem. So when the nurses come come to me and they make a compelling case that, Paul, this is an issue throughout hospitals across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and then the hospital executives then turn around and say, well, we don't want to pay for it. Look, I think the healthcare system is broken as a whole across this country, and there is a lot of savings that we can realize in healthcare. Let's start with executive compensation and the profits that they're sending overseas. Let's look at the reimbursement rates for those small hospitals, as my opponent was just talking about, and make sure that the big boys aren't necessarily eating up all those profits and really affecting negatively the community hospitals. So there's a lot of savings in healthcare, but it belongs in direct patient care.
Fantastic. Just as we go on, I appreciate the applause. I know it's an exciting time. We're going to, just to keep things rolling, we're going to ask to not applause after every time we speak. But your rebuttal, Candidate Ventura.
Sure. Paul, I believe I just said if this particular, as written, I don't support it. So as a senator and as the next senator, I would not support this as written. This takes too much decision-making, operational decision-making authority out of our local nurses and physicians and administrators' hands. And secondly, I think we need to be very clear. The Mass Nurses Association, which gave you $15,000 last year, they only represent 20 or 25% of the nurses in the Commonwealth. I've been knocking on thousands of doors, nurses throughout this district, and I think the polling numbers are accurate. I think there are many nurses who are not comfortable with this staffing ratio as well. So those are the facts.
Thank you. And our next question is from Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke, first answered by Senator Feeney.
There are so many questions and so many conversations that we need to have about awareness, funding, and insurance coverage surrounding mental health. But this particular question goes beyond just money. We need a cultural shift on how we speak about mental health conditions at the local level, as there are stigma and shame barriers for people to reach out for help. How do you address the issues of mental health, depression, anxiety, bipolar, when you are meeting with your people on the local level as well as on the state level?
Thank you for the wonderful question. I will, just to go back here, suggest to my opponent that if he's going to make his decisions based on polls, then he probably shouldn't be elected.
I never said that. I didn't say that.
Look, we're called to lead, and I think that the question you just brought up about awareness and mental health, it's not just a funding issue, right? We do have to change the culture, transform the way we talk to each other and the way we deal with each other. I am frightened every single day I see the Trump administration and the Republican Party with their talking points about how they're treating people, how they bully people. Imagine the anxiety. Imagine the anxiety that our youth feel these days. When we're sending them off to schools and we're talking about bullying, and we're talking about how to treat people respectfully, and they see President Trump and the leaders of this country completely devalue people, and to talk about them the way they do, that is frightening. So the first thing we need to do is to be bold and to lead in our own districts, in our own communities, to start at our own kitchen tables with our children and with our families, to carry that to the workplace. I'm thrilled to be the champion of a workplace bullying bill that was filed last year by another senator who left the body, and they came to me and they said, Paul, this is important. We've had alarming rates of suicide among workers because they're bullied in the workplace. And we have this kind of old cultural mentality that we don't talk about it, or this toxic masculinity that we can't deal with it. It's not just about funding. It's about stepping up and making sure that we treat each other with respect and dignity, and that we do it at every level, whether it's the local level, at the state legislative level, or, my God, at the federal level especially. So we have a lot of work to do on that, but it's going to take leaders that are willing to actually admit that it exists and then fix it on their own. Thank you.
Thank you. And your response?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Mental health is a huge issue that I think, Paul mentioned. There has been a stigma over the last, decades, and this is an issue that this state should lead the nation in tackling. Again, I've knocked on thousands of doors throughout this district. I've had a chance to meet a number of people. This issue has come up. Paul mentioned students, whether it's bullying, online bullying. I've talked to many, many veterans who come back from combat and service who have issues, mental health related issues, senior citizens. It's a rising concern among seniors, and suicide, mental health issues. And also, we cannot forget our public safety personnel, firefighters and police officers who are going in and day out and putting their lives on the line. And these issues translate into domestic violence that we need to tackle, opioid addictions, gun violence. So these are things that very, very concerned about. And I hope in January I'll be able to tackle this issue. This is actually an issue that's very important to me.
Thank you. And your rebuttal.
To follow up on what I said earlier, Brett, and again, thank you for the question. Look, words matter. Words matter. And the way that we communicate with each other, the way that we communicate with each other in politics, the way that we run our campaigns, the way that we lead, the way that our teachers educate, words matter. We're setting an example for future generations. Mental illness is something that isn't just, doesn't just come by way of nature. It is nurtured, and we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure that we're actually changing the way that we deal with each other. I'm proud that we talk about first responders. It runs rampant through many first responders through the state, that I actually advocated for increased funding to the on-site academy in Massachusetts to deal with those issues for those first responders as well.
Thank you. And our next panelist question is brought to you by Gil Rogers, and with our first response coming from Candidate Ventura.
Perhaps the biggest and most difficult problem from a development perspective is the state hospital. It's a very, as has been pointed out, it's a very prominent part of Medfield, can have a huge impact on the future of the area. And as you know, a preferred plan has been developed and is available for everyone to look at on the town website. And also an RFI has been sent out to try to get feedback from the development community on the economic feasibility of that plan. One of the key questions that we have is implementation. How do you go to the next phase in the plan? And certainly a key part of that is the financial aspect, the financial support. So for example, two things that are in the plan that are very important is that from a developer's perspective, you have to look on state and federal tax credits in order to make it a viable plan from a developer's perspective. Another key part of the financial aspect is the infrastructure costs. And we've done estimates that those could be on the order of $20 million, plus or minus 30%. So it's a big budget item to try to address. So obtaining tax credits and addressing the costs for infrastructure are two of the key implementation questions. So my question to you, in your responsibility as a representative from this area, how will you be able to assist in obtaining the financial resources necessary to make this a successful and effective plan for the area?
Sure, thank you for that question. And I know we've discussed this in the past, this very issue. I think Representative Dooley in the last segment had mentioned bringing stakeholders together. That's something I'm very familiar with doing on Beacon Hill and in our local communities. This is a federal, state, and local partnership, and that's what you have to do. As the senator, my opinion is that we let Medfield decide what Medfield wants to do with that property, and in my view, we do everything we can on the back end up on Beacon Hill to make that a reality. In my opening statement, I had cited various funding projects, state grants. These things happen over time, but it takes advocacy on Beacon Hill. I know how to do that, and we need to do it in a bipartisan manner as well. I think it's very important with this particular plan going off of your question now, I agree with the emphasis on the arts community and looking at alternatives for alternative uses of that land, and as well as DCR-controlled parcels. The state senator would deal directly with DCR and making sure that those state-controlled parcels fit into the overall master plan of the town. But I think ultimately it's a Medfield decision, not a state senator decision. Our job is to make sure that we support ultimately whatever the findings are.
Senator Feeney.
Thank you, Gil, and thank you for all the work for so many years that you and the community have been doing. I am blown away by the amount of study and research and planning and hundreds of meetings and planning sessions that have gone into this. I became familiar with it, as you know, in 2005 when I was my predecessor, former Senator Jim Timmelty's chief of staff, and just a couple of years post closure and trying to figure out the decamp process and how we were going to release that land. And now here we are. Here we are with a great master reuse plan that I think is our previous attendees to the debate said, we got to a place because of so many stakeholders and community people coming together and coming up with a plan, and I know that wasn't easy, so thank you. Whether it's the state hospital plan or Lot 3 and Hinckley, this is a major project that should be a model for for community growth throughout the Commonwealth going forward. What do you do as a state senator? Well, one of the things that I've done in the last year since being elected state senator is to partner with our administration, the Secretary of Economic Development, to understand that each community has its own unique needs, but it really is about regional issues. It's about regional growth, with the understanding that while you grow, you have to be careful with your resources. The question comes up on transportation infrastructure, water, right, sewage. These are major issues that are facing Medfield going forward. As a state senator, it's my job to help us navigate through that bureaucracy, to make sure that we're getting grants from MassWorks for transportation and other infrastructure. I was happy this year to work with a colleague on our economic development bill to put millions of dollars into the MassWorks program exactly for items like this. So going forward, I hope to be able to kind of use the bully pulpit as a senator to advocate for Medfield and to make sure that we're actually growing in a smart way and we can make sure that we get the funding from the state to build to the infrastructure so that we can fully realize what the plan is in Medfield.
And you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Sure, and again, I just want to cite back to my previous experience with this regard, whether it's transportation projects, funding of local schools, whether it's roof replacement, revamping of town greens, sidewalk installation. These are things that it's our job to do. And I think Paul and I actually agree on this issue. Whoever's elected on November 6th, I think is going to be a huge advocate for Medfield State Hospital in this town. And I'll just close by saying, with regards to infrastructure, one of my main pillars on the, okay.
Yeah, thank you. And I give up my final question to our Medfield High School senior here tonight, Kaylin Sheehy. Kaylin?
Good evening. The platform you've been running on covers a wide range of issues. Should you be elected, what's the highest priority issue you want to address in your first day in office?
And the first answer is coming from Senator Feeney.
So this is a continuance of a work in progress since I got elected a year ago, and thank you for being here tonight to see high school students and youth engaged. It gives me hope for the future, so thank you. Look, I have talked to thousands of people throughout this district as their senator, and I would tell you that there is an overriding kind of economic anxiety. And that economic anxiety comes from a lot of different issues. We silo it tonight, which we should, and talk about healthcare and education and jobs, but ultimately they all fit together. Ultimately they all fit together. People are very nervous that the healthcare costs are going to keep rising and they won't be able to afford it. Prescription costs, housing costs. We have a major issue here in Medfield. We have seniors that want to stay and age in place. They can't afford the housing in a community that they helped build. So when we talk about one or two different issues, it really comes down to an overriding economic anxiety that's tied to healthcare costs. It's tied to jobs, making sure that we invest in 21st century jobs here in Medfield and in this region, so that people understand where the next paycheck is coming from. Making sure that we have enough housing stock, like we're talking about at the Medfield State Hospital property and other places in town. It's that overriding economic anxiety. I spoke with a friend of mine, a colleague in the Senate, and I said years ago the economic development bill would be that middle class bill. that bill where we ensured that we were taking care of people that were working to make ends meet. And I think we've lost our way over the years. Starting on January 1st, I'm going to make sure that we do everything we can to have a sweeping omnibus bill that addresses the cost of education, health care, and housing so that we take care of our communities like Medfield. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, great. Thank you for that question. I was finishing the last segment with regards to infrastructure, and so this is a good segue. Chapter 90 and Chapter 70, those are my two priorities. In order to increase Chapter 90 and 70 for our schools and our roads and our overpasses and bridges, we need to make sure that state government is being run as effectively as possible. I had the opportunity to serve on a local finance committee during a bleak economic time when you had to stretch a dollar. Things are going pretty well for the state right now, but I'd like to see us tighten up our fiscal controls at the state level. I think Representative Dooley mentioned the ever-ballooning mass health budget debacle, which is continuing to crowd out discretionary funding. We need to solve mass health and make sure people who need the care continue to get the care, but also make the tough reforms. We want to ultimately continue to increase the level of services that state government provides, but do it at a lower cost, and it is possible. If you do that, you'll find savings in the state budget, and with those savings, my plan is to increase Chapter 70, Chapter 90, schools and roads. Those are two of the biggest components that I hear out knocking doors. You need a great transportation system to move goods and services and people in the 21st century, and you need great schools. So those are the things I'd like to do, and continue to support Governor Baker's efforts at reforming state government. This is something he's been able to do in his administration. He's been able to find reforms along the way, reduce some of the cost of state government, and pass those savings on through increased local aid. So,
in your rebuttal.
Thank you, Brett. Making government more accountable and I guess to the citizens and the taxpayers is important. I think every legislator should have that on the top of their mind. One of the things we talk about mass health and the ballooning costs of mass health, and all I've seen as an answer from others is, well, we'll just throw people off of it. And I don't think the answer to a broken healthcare system is to simply throw people off of a system here in Massachusetts, put more in an uncompensated care pool that we all pay for. Healthcare is broken. We need sweeping, bold, and overriding reform to that system.
That's your time.
Thank you, Brett.
Yeah. 30 seconds isn't enough to get the whole idea out, huh?
Very tough. That's all right.
But thank you for your responses, candidates. Now we ask that the audience in attendance participates. Write down a question for the candidates, and we'll collect those, and our panelists will each choose one to ask. I know we have a bunch already, but if you haven't had a chance, just scribble something down real quick, and we're going to collect those, and in about 5 minutes, we'll have those answered for you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for submitting your questions. We now open to our audience questions. Our first question coming from Amelia Tarallo, answered first by Jacob Ventura.
So when I was in college, is this on? Okay. When I was in college taking political science courses, one thing that we went over is that not enough people vote, specifically in my generation. There's not enough people voting. There's, a contrast in who is voting and who is not. And something I noticed is that we are one of a few states that do not have same-day registration. And this question is, do you think that we should have same-day registration?
No, I don't. I support increased voter turnout. Look, Paul and I ran in a special election last year, and we spent thousands of dollars, and I think we had, what, a 12% turnout? So no, of course we want increased turnout, but I also support security in our voting systems, so I'm opposed to same-day voting registration for security purposes. I think there's been too much going on across this country with international threats on our election systems, digital threats, where at this point I would not be comfortable supporting that. But of course, I support increased turnout. Look, go to town hall, register to vote. It's simple.
And your response?
Yes, I do support same-day registration. I think we as leaders need to do everything we can to make sure that we make it as easy as possible for people to go out and vote. My opponent says it's that simple. You go to town hall, you register, and you show up to vote. It's not that easy for everybody. Proportionally throughout communities of color throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it's become an issue. Senior citizens have an issue getting out to vote. Look, I have a great relationship with our Secretary of State, who has done an amazing job here in Massachusetts to secure our election system. We don't have an issue. Those are all Trump Republican talking points when they talk about security at the voting booth. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to turn people out, not to sit here and say, well, I want more people to show up. Well, what are you going to do? I was a supporter of automatic voter registration for a reason. I support same-day registration for a reason. Our country works best, our democracy works best when people participate and they take part. The second piece to that is, as candidates and as leaders, it falls on us. If we simply go out with more of the same tired campaigning and politics as usual, where we throw out negative mail like my opponent hit me with last year and is continuing to do again this year, fake automated phone calls to voters like hit me in my campaign last year, what do you think that does to the process? There are people that want to have hope and be inspired and have a reason to vote. It's incumbent upon us to run clean, positive campaigns and give them a reason to come out and vote. Not simply to say, well, I want you to show up and vote, but I'm going to do everything I can to muddy the waters, make it difficult, and run in a way that actually turns people off from elections. So I support same-day registration. I support a lot of initiatives to make sure that we're getting increased folks out to vote. I talk with students all the time in our district to make sure that they're registering early, which they can do now in Massachusetts, and then again, giving them a reason to actually show up and vote on Election Day.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what just came out of your mouth, Paul, but I will tell you this. Look, we all support increased voter registration among all people, okay, period, all right? With regards to negative mail, it's not negative mail if I'm sending out something differentiating myself and you. You support sanctuary cities and sanctuary state, and I don't, and you're running from that record. I hope we get to that in this debate, but that's the mail. You voted for Amendment 1147 in Senate Bill 4 on May 23rd, and now you're running from that record.
Proves my point.
We can't differentiate ourselves? We can't differentiate ourselves, Paul? I think that's what we owe it to the voters, and to stand by your record, the record you're running from.
You're a liar. Our next question is from Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke, answered first by Senator Feeney.
Thank you. Do you support Maura Healey and Governor Baker's positions in eliminating bump stocks, background checks, and having police chiefs determine if someone should have a gun?
That's to me, Brett?
Yep.
Bump stocks, yeah, absolutely. I actually missed that vote by a little bit. When I got sworn in last year after the special election, they had previously done that, and we had a formality vote afterwards, and I supported it and continue to support that. Background checks, certainly. The ability of our police chiefs to be able to make the decisions on who in their communities can actually have a license to carry and own a gun, that is sacred in our communities. Who knows better than the police chiefs in our towns and the police officers in our towns who should have a license to carry and who shouldn't have that right to do that? You know, my opponent in a questionnaire last year made it clear that he wants to take away that authority from police chiefs. Imagine that. He talks about public safety, but imagine taking away the authority from our police chiefs on who should have a weapon in their community. That is criminal in my mind, and I certainly don't support that. I think we need to do more. We need to have common sense gun reform here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have some of the strongest laws in the nation, and it shows, But it's not enough to just sit back and say, well, you know, I support the Second Amendment. We're not going to have any sort of regulations at all. That's not how this works. And we put our schools in danger. We put our churches, our houses of worship in danger when we take away that authority from our local police officers and tell them that they can't decide who's going to have a license to carry, to vet people in our communities to have those guns. I think that's a dangerous idea and certainly not something that I support.
Your response.
Police chiefs, bump stocks, and what was the third?
Eliminating bump stocks, background checks, and having police chiefs determine if someone should have a gun.
Yeah, look, Massachusetts, Paul said, has the strictest gun laws in the nation. We also have the lowest gun violence in the nation. Whether that correlation, that's a correlation between those two, I'm not sure, but I do believe in states' rights to implement their own regulations on firearms ownership. That also being said, we're one of the few nations in the world who has a constitutional right to bear arms, and that's a fact, whether you like it or you don't like it. We have a Second Amendment in this country which makes us very, very unique. I've traveled abroad doing legal work, on constitutional legal work, and it's one of the most common questions I usually get is people are just baffled at our right to bear arms, and people internationally think that there are guns everywhere. Look, at the end of the day, this is about public safety, and we can still protect people's Second Amendment rights and also emphasize public safety. Paul mentioned schools. Look, we were down in Seekonk recently meeting with the police chief and parents and administrators and teachers to go over training in an event, an unfortunate event. We need to make sure that we are emphasizing public safety as well. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Just to follow up on what I just said, my opponent answered in a questionnaire that he would take away the authority of police chiefs to issue a license to carry and actually mandate that they must do it. The second thing he said in that questionnaire is that he would defund the Office of the Attorney General, our top law enforcement officer in Massachusetts, the Attorney General who protects consumers, who ensures that we're fighting crime throughout the Commonwealth. He would defund her office because he doesn't agree with where she is on assault weapons. That's a dangerous idea. I think we need to do more. I'm a Second Amendment supporter. I grew up going right here to the Medfield Sportsman Club with my dad, but we need common sense gun control in Massachusetts.
Thank you. And our next question brought to you by Gil Rogers, and the first response is from candidate Ventura.
I think one of the things that's on all of our minds is the tragedy that just occurred in Pittsburgh, and a realization that that can happen any place. It's not just Pittsburgh, it's not just Florida, it can happen here. The question is, would you agree or disagree that President Trump bears some responsibility for the acts of violence that our country is experiencing? That's part one. And part two is, what would be your advice to the president?
I reject the notion that President Trump has responsibility for that unfortunate situation. I don't buy that narrative, what's happened in the media. This was a tragic incident, and we send our prayers to those families. When we debated up here last year, it was on the heels of the Las Vegas shooting as well. Look, public safety is a cornerstone of my campaign, and we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to give our local county, state, and federal law enforcement the tools they need to make sure that we can prosecute people who are here, who shouldn't have guns, and protect the people. And again, common sense gun laws, which I'm for, Paul, by the way. With regards to Trump, though, look, I don't, his rhetoric is sometimes off the wall. I don't agree with his rhetoric. And my advice to him would be to continue to just focus on the job. Be a little more like Charlie Baker. That's my advice to him.
Thank you. I'm heartbroken over what we saw this past weekend at the synagogue, Tree of Life Synagogue. And every time something like that happens, Gil, I say, well, maybe we hit bottom this time. Maybe it's over. Maybe we can finally come together and come up with a solution so that we're not dealing with kids getting shot in schools, people in our communities, in movie theaters, and now in houses of worship. Do I think the president bears some responsibility? Absolutely. And I said it earlier when we talked about mental health. Words matter. Words matter. We're held to a higher standard as leaders, whether it's a selectman in a community, whether it's a legislator, or if you're the president of the United States. Your words matter. The way in which you talk, the way in which you deliver a message actually affects people. And, you know, to hear last year after the tragedy in Charlottesville, the president to talk about neo-Nazis, the absolute dredges of society, and to say there were fine people on both sides, that empowers people. That empowers people that want to do damage, that want to do harm, that want to hurt people. We can't stand up for that. We need to be bold, and we don't need leaders that, you know, say, well, you know, I don't think he bears responsibility. I wish he wouldn't do it. You need to be bold. We need to take the words of Elie Wiesel into our own minds and hearts and realize that if we stay silent, if we don't stand up for the tormented, then the tormentor wins. Words matter. And the words and the divisiveness that come from him and others in the Republican Party and his supporters has a large effect on what we're starting to see through this country. Something has changed. Something is different. We need to address mental health. We need to address gun control. But we also need to lead and say that the way that the president is speaking about a lot of issues just doesn't fly. Here in Massachusetts, we should be the backstop against that. Our state senators should be the backstop against that.
And your rebuttal.
Yeah, the fact that you're using this tragedy for political points is an absolute disgrace. Okay, period. Now, with regards to the tone and rhetoric, this is something I feel very, very important about. I do believe in bipartisan leadership. Fortunately, here in the Commonwealth, up on Beacon Hill, Democrats and Republicans work together on local issues. And I think Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito have done a great job at kind of ignoring the noise of Washington. And that's what my goal as the senator is to do, ignore the noise of Washington.
That's tough. And our final audience question will be from our senior high school student. Kaylin, your question.
How do you plan to help Massachusetts comply with the Global Warming Solutions Act?
And that'll be answered first by Senator Feeney.
Thank you, Kaylin, for the question. Look, first we need to be honest with each other. Global warming actually exists. Climate change is real. And despite the fact that some people find others that say that it doesn't exist, science is science. So we have to be real about the fact that it does exist. We see the ramifications of it here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I was proud this year to take a lead role in an environmental bill and an energy bill so that we could actually begin, and we should have begun a long time ago, but that we could actually make changes that do our part here in Massachusetts. This is a global issue, no doubt about it. But when our president and his party aren't going to do enough throughout this country, then we expect our leaders here in Massachusetts to step up and do what's necessary. So this year, as part of our energy bill, I made sure that I fought for incentivizing green energy so that we can put people to work in the solar, the photovoltaic, wind turbine sectors. You know, that's important for us to do. At the same time, I stood up. I filed an amendment. I filed an amendment in that bill to say that in Massachusetts, let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's divest from thermal coal. Let's take the money that we invest in pension funds and say it doesn't belong in thermal coal. Let's send a message there, and I was happy that my colleagues supported that in a bipartisan way, unanimously in the Senate. Those are the types of initiatives that we need to do here in Massachusetts. Incentivizing green energy, incentivizing clean energy, making sure that we're moving away from thermal coal and dirty energy, having aggressive RPS standards, renewable portfolio standards, so that we're actually getting to a place where Massachusetts is relying a lot more on renewable energy in a shorter time frame over the next few years.
Thank you.
To repeat the question.
Sure. How do you plan to help Massachusetts comply with the Global Warming Solutions Act?
Thank you. Look, Massachusetts has led the nation in reducing carbon emissions, and I think we need to continue that trend. For example, the Paris Accord that the president withdrew from last year, I supported the fact that Massachusetts continued, along with a host of other states, to continue those high standards. With regards to the renewable portfolio standard, which Paul mentioned, we need to continue to increase hydro hydro, solar, and wind. I think it was a good bill. I think it could go further. And I think when I'm in the Senate in January, I'm going to make sure that percentage of our state's energy increases. We need to continue to increase our alternative energy sources and decrease natural gas. I'm also proud of the fact that in the State House office, the town of Rehoboth, the southernmost portion of this district, there was a huge fight for putting in a compressor gas station. We fought it. We filed 3 bills. That issue is now dead for now. So we're against expanding gas pipelines. Probably an issue I disagree with many of my Republican colleagues on, increasing the renewable portfolio standard. And finally, one of the issues that we don't talk enough about, and this is something I've been trying to lead and will lead in the legislature, is energy transmission and energy storage. There is a lot of waste when you go from solar and wind to a consumer. Estimated 30 to 40% of energy waste, and those savings we can pass on. There are companies out there who have harnessed AC and DC electric currents, believe it or not, and concurrently can flow those from source to source. If we could save taxpayers in the state, whether it's a university, a police station, a private consumer, whether it's a business or a house, 30 to 40% in energy costs through alternative energy, I think that's something we ought to do. So increase the RPS, decrease natural gas reliance, and then really focus on energy storage.
That's time. Yep. And your rebuttal.
To follow up on some of the initiatives that I took, and Jacob does great work as a staff member, but I want to be clear, those are his boss. That was his state representative that were doing that. I want to talk about my record and what I've done, and one of the issues that I saw was a compressor station that was down, proposed for the Rehoboth, Seekonk, Attleboro area in our district. I co-sponsored an amendment and fought for an amendment with a Republican colleague from Weymouth. We fought for an amendment that would restrict the siting of compressor stations against what our leadership wanted us to do in that bill, but I thought it was the right thing for our district. I joined with my Republican colleague to get that done.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all that participated, wrote questions in, and really got involved in this debate. I think that's an awesome way that we have you guys get involved, so thank you. We now reach to the close of our event. Each candidate will receive 3 minutes to deliver their closing statement, and first we have candidate Ventura.
I want to thank, again, the panelists for this rousing discussion, and Brett and Medfield TV and the folks here at the high school for putting on another successful debate. I want to thank my opponent, Paul. Paul and I have been campaigning now against each other for almost 18 months. It feels like a presidential campaign, but it ends in 1 week. So the most important thing is remember to get out and vote, back to that question, whether it's early voting or on election day. And thank you to our dynamic audience. Over the past 18 months, I've traveled throughout all 9 municipalities of the Bristol-Norfolk district, including every neighborhood in this town. In an age where political campaigns are relying more heavily on technology to communicate, I decided to turn back the clock and commit to good old-fashioned door-to-door campaigning. To date, I have personally knocked on over 20,000 doors throughout this district. That includes Republicans and Democrats, unenrolleds and independents, men and women, young and old, gay and straight, and people of all races. And I mention this to make aware to the voters that a candidate can be no closer to a community in which they seek to represent than by truly knowing the community at a grassroots level, which means in person and face to face. This is best achieved in campaigns by visiting people at their doors. I've been immersed in the local issues: Medfield State Hospital redevelopment, 40B housing and zoning laws here in Medfield, Chapter 70 education funding reforms, to name a few. On the trail, I've talked to doctors and lawyers, teachers, nurses, police, firefighters, and people in the trades. I've talked to those who are struggling to find work and students trying to pay off student debt. I've talked to mothers who worry about school safety and the fathers who just want their roads repaved. I've spoken to veterans who are struggling to acquire the benefits that they deserve, and seniors struggling to afford to live in the homes that they built years ago. These are the stories that drive me and inspire me to run for this office. These stories will not make it on the front page headlines, but they and the people behind them are what make our community strong. Solving these issues is what my prior public service has always been about. I want to serve the great people of this region and help make a difference in their lives. I've done it as a staff member in the House of Representatives, on a finance committee, and with your trust and confidence, I look forward to doing it as your next senator in January. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Feeney.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you so much to the wonderful panel, our audience. Again, folks watching at home, this is a true honor and a pleasure to have this opportunity to campaign. I always talk about, as a senator, you get boiled down to sometimes into the nuances and the, policy. But when you're out in the community, which is what I frequently do, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I treat this job with the reverence it deserves. I meet with community members throughout every one of the 9 cities and towns of this district to understand what's important, to fight, to be an effective voice for them on Beacon Hill, and to bring Beacon Hill to Medfield, to bring Beacon Hill to our district. Look, I think you've seen tonight and over the last 18 months, as my opponent says, we've been running against each other. The choice is clear. The choice is clear. Look, we are in a difficult place as a country. Women's reproductive rights are under attack with the latest confirmation of a judge. It's obvious that Roe is just one vote away from being overturned. People expect their leaders in Massachusetts to be a backstop to stick up for women and their reproductive rights here in the Commonwealth. Our senators must be a backstop to that rhetoric that we see throughout this country. Workers' rights are under attack. Members of the LGBTQ community are under attack nationally and even here in Massachusetts with Question 3, a ballot initiative that I never thought we would see. Yet my opponent last year running a Republican primary said, yeah, I would absolutely overturn those transgender protection laws. And then this year, running now, he took a different tack. People need to know where you stand as leaders. People need to know where you stand as a senator. They need to know that you're going to fight for them, that you're going to stick up for them, that you're going to treat this job and the people of this district with respect. I've done that. I'm proud of my work as a state senator. I'm proud of what we've done over the last year, and I look forward to representing this district for a full term. I'm proud to be endorsed and supported by so many local leaders throughout this district, including organizations from Planned Parenthood, the Environmental League of Massachusetts, Sierra Club, Massachusetts Teachers Association, the American Federation of Teachers Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Coalition of Police, the New England Police Benevolent Association, the Massachusetts Corrections Officers, Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts, the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, and so many more throughout this district. And while that support and those endorsements mean so much to me as we wage this campaign for re-election, it's your endorsement, it's your vote, it's your trust that I hope I've earned. And I want to ask for your vote once again on Tuesday, November 6th for re-election. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I would like to take the moment to just say that we are sitting in the Medfield High School auditorium. When we come in to set up as Medfield TV, we take over a little bit, and the Medfield Theater Society was always, they seem to always be rehearsing as soon as we come in. So I just want to plug their show as a thank you to them. They have a Midsummer Night's Dream, and it's by obviously William Shakespeare, but it's on Saturday, November 17th at 7 p.m. right here, and it's Sunday, November 18th at 2 p.m. right here. So I want to thank them for allowing us to interrupt their rehearsals. If you wish to see more of these two gentlemen, I got the pleasure to sit down with them each and interview them. I feel like we've sat down for over an hour now over the past 18 months. You guys do this, and then I get to talk to you all the time. But that is available both on YouTube and on our government channel, so you can check out those interviews there. I wish to thank everyone involved in tonight's event. Again, the candidates, Representative Denise Garlick was with us tonight, Shawn Dooley and candidate Brian Hamlin, absolutely. And of course, the two gentlemen sitting to my left, Senator Paul Feeney and candidate Jacob Ventura. Our volunteers who helped us not only set up the stage, but also collected questions and went through those. Cheryl Dunley, Eileen Desorga, Kelly Kyle, Chris McHugh, Bonnie Wren Burgess, and senior Kaylin Sheehy. So thank you guys so much. We work with the schools, obviously, the custodians that are buzzing around. They obviously do a lot for us. They keep the place clean and set up for us. But also our audio specialist tonight, Seth Hellerstein, thank you. And our entire staff of Medfield TV at the Selectmen meeting is Rachel Ferrulo, and here tonight is Eric Giselle, Hongli Bruto, and Olivia Duvall. I am Brett Porter, reminding all of you to vote next week on Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you for watching Medfield TV, and good night.